Hello, how's it going everyone? So in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the Applovin application or Axon and how a lot of people are pretty much hyping this up, and it's being viewed as sort of the, a super secret tactic that you can use to get a really good end result when it comes to marketing. And we actually shot another video on this showing evidence as to the thesis that we came to on our other channel called CPRO Growth. So all of this is back tested. We also have some other evidence as well too, but in that example, that was just an easy one to kind of showcase. So one of the things that we've noticed about Applovin, and if you don't know much about it, essentially it's just app placement ads. Let's just leave it simple as that, right? And so they've, kind of rebranded their marketing side to Axon, and a lot of people are saying that it's getting really good results. And so we tested that and found that that was actually not the case. Now it looks good from a top line, or not a top line, but from a macro or a micro perspective whenever you're using a third-party attribution tool, or even just looking at the app itself. A lot of times we'll see, for example, that ROAS goes really far up in these platforms here. Now, this is just mainly due to the fact that the attribution is a lot easier for it to capture further down the funnel. If you guys haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend checking it out. We have that on the YouTube channel here, but anything that is geared more towards last click is going to be more easily attributed across all these platforms. And so the reason why I've kind of moved away from these platforms is not necessarily because they're bad per se. It's more so just that they don't really tell the full story and they cause more confusion. And proven that, is literally did this exact thing for Axon, right? It looked like the ROAS was really good, overall results were amazing, and put more money into Axon kind of thing. And what we're finding out is the more money that we scaled up into Axon, the worse our top line metrics got. And the reason for that was because no other channel was increasing, our top line wasn't increasing at all. Axon was just sustaining and stealing attribution from other platforms. And what we found from this was really it's just remarketing people. It's not necessarily driving new customers, it's just scooping up return customers from your already existing customer base because they're just passing by, they see a reminder, they click on the ad, it attributes it, and then they say, oh, I earned that ad when in reality, or earned that sale when in reality, it did not start the buying process, it just worked towards the bottom of the funnel. It's like running a brand campaign on Google, right? Like you're not driving new customers by having a brand campaign in Google. You're just capturing customers that already knew about your brand in the first place. And so Axon, we found, was actually very similar to this. And the reason for that, like I just mentioned, is that it prioritizes warm traffic over cold traffic because warm traffic looks better and it's easier to attribute than that of cold traffic. This is actually a problem on all platforms. It's just a larger problem on some platforms versus another. So I would say that on Axon, very large issue that it over attributes towards warm traffic. Google, I would also say, is another channel that attributes too much to warm traffic. If you're running Performance Max, you probably know this really well. And then I would say that Meta is a little bit better than this, but still with the new Andromeda update is still over attributing towards repeat customers, which is why we use CAPI imports with edge-based tagging. So if you are using these tools or any tool like it, just be very aware that just because these platforms look good in these tools doesn't actually mean that they're performing good for your business. So if I were to, let's say, scale up, and we'll just use very simple logic here real quick. Let me see if I can actually pull up from my other board of everything over here. So if I were to take Meta and Google, we'll go back down over here and let me just shrink this down, right? This is the super simplistic way of testing this theory out. Makes it so much easier, and you don't even have to worry about, you're really just going through each individual platform. Makes it really simple. So basic case here. So we're gonna use, I'll just use global NMR, right? Or for another term, global NMR, or new customer ROAS, right? For those of you that aren't familiar with MER, ROAS is pretty much the same thing. We're just looking at this globally, right? So if we're in a scenario where we have, let's say, spend levels are represented by the size of the image. So we'll say that we're spending a lot of Axon, a little bit on Meta, and then a lot more on Google, right? So we have Meta as being sort of the lowest or least spend, and Axon being the most spend. And let's say that our overall ROAS in this is, I don't know, 200%, right? So we're gonna do 200% globally, right, on new customers. So we're tracking, the reason why we track new customers is because you can have a lot of LTV or return customers that can come through your funnel, and you won't necessarily be able to see the validity of your test if you were to include that batch as well, because that's from previous results. That's going to come in regardless, in most cases, from email, a sale that you're doing, maybe there's their buying cycle. If you have, for example, every 3 months you have people that come back and buy the product again, that's going to mess up your total efficiency or your total MER when you look at that. So looking at new will give you a better picture as to what is impacting the funnel more immediately than more long term, which is what you have more control over in the first place. So what you can do to see if this is happening is just reduce spend on Axon and increase spend on these other channels. I would recommend Meta, but either one of these channels. You can even just reduce spend on Axon and leave it and see if volume stays the same, and what does your efficiency do for new customers. Typically what tends to happen, and this is what we've seen, is whenever we reduce Axon down, efficiency goes, let's say, from 200% to 300%, and volume holds the same with a lower amount of ad spend. And that just shows you that there's a lot of extra ad spend that's being attributed that's not actually contributing to your top line metrics of that, global MER or new customer ROAS, whatever you want to call it. And this is really just what mixed modeling comes down to, right? We're just testing high spend here, lower spend here, or high spend here, right? And we test this new mix. We say, okay, this actually brought us down to 100%. Okay, what was the cause of it? Well, maybe we increased Applovin too much. Let's shrink it down. Oh, now we're back to 200%. Well, what happens if we shrink Meta a little bit more? Okay, maybe we're actually now out to 250%, right? So we're trying to find the best mix of spend between these three channels. And by doing that, you can bypass using these third-party tools and stop relying on attribution, because that gets you into the trap in the first place of overly relying on channels that are more bottom of funnel and not focusing on typically more top of funnel channels. Now, I'm not saying that Meta is always going to be top of funnel, but it's just something to keep in mind whenever you're running multiple channels. You want to make sure that you are trusting the top line numbers and not just what the third-party platforms are saying in the first place. Not saying that you can't use them, it's just something that you want to be aware of and not just take it for face value. You want to look more into what is actually happening to your top line metrics, everything put together, right? So I'm going to highlight that one more time, is that global, in the sense of what I'm saying is these are all the channels combined together. So we're looking at all the ad spend and the entire revenue from new customers. That's our goal with this. So we're looking at the global NMER or AMER or new customer ROAS, whatever you want to call it. How much are we paying? How much are we getting? What's that spend ratio of new customers that we're getting from all the ad spend that we put into our marketplace? A lot of times, like I said, people focus on just general metrics like ROAS and they don't look beyond that. So this is a very simple way to model what kind of data is coming through these platforms to then better assess if, for example, you want to invest more into Axon or not, and not just trust what it says. So anyways, I'm rambling, but I want to say thanks again for watching this video. I hope you guys stay safe out there during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. This is a very different year when it comes to that. So I shot a previous video on exactly what we do for Black Friday, what we plan to do for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. This will be our first year with the Andromeda update, so we'll have a lot more insights to share with you guys in the future for preparation for next year, but a lot of tests that we're going through, so really excited to kind of get that to you guys. So anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video, and yeah, peace.